So I'm going to start speaking in English again, because last time we did say that English was the language of startups and startup world, so we got it to speak English. And we, of course, have some people that don't speak Croatian, so that helps as well. But okay. So welcome to the second meeting of Croatian Startup Ecosystem Association. As you can see, this one's called boring stuff. So we do understand that there's part of the process of like every startup's journey that also has to do a lot with BSing. So we decided to rename it into boring stuff, the BS, because there's a lot of legal things that you have to go through, that you have to understand the terminology, that you have to go through the various documents. And yes, it can be boring, but it can also be hard. What we want to do is we want to demystify all of that. So the first boring stuff meetup is going to be on the topic of a term sheet, because term sheet is there on the journey of almost every startup, because almost every startup will go at some point through the fundraising process, and term sheet is simply a part of it, an essential part of it. So we decided also with this, we're going to kick off the repository of templates, because we want to also bring all those various documents that every startup has to have at some point. And we want to create templates so that Croatian startups don't have to start from scratch. So that this has some basics that you can start with, and then of course adjust and customize to your needs. So the first one is going to be a term sheet, and who better to talk about term sheets but our keynote speaker, Mr. Tim Tejak, the lawyer partner at the Hanžeković and Partners law firm, who has been very, very kind and has donated his time and knowledge to create the term sheets. That's going to be the first template, and he's also going to go through it and go through all the aspects of it and all the details, information, elements of term sheets, so that we can finally understand what it is, all those weird things and weird expressions that appear in term sheets. So without further ado, team, please come here, and the floor is yours. Thank you.
Glad to be here, and thank you all for coming. And I would like to thank also and also my colleagues from Hanžeković and Partners law firms who have been cooperating with me on this term sheet, and also my which has also been, I would say, one of the good souls who started the whole process. I'm going to walk around a bit because I have to move my slides. Okay, so term sheet, this is the topic. And first of all, I'm going to try to understand why we all talk about boring legal stuff, because it's a startup world and everybody thinks they know best. They're on their way to conquer the world, and now why are we stopping them and speaking about some boring stuff which is for all people? But I wanted to talk about the term sheet because this is an important milestone, I would say, in the life of every startup. So usually when you do the first round of investment, that means that you're, as I said, letting others into the company, because before that, we're the founders, and usually there is, I would say, a degree of harmony between the founders, at least at the very beginning, and they know what they're doing, they have a good idea, and they're very optimistic. And of course, once you let the investors in, then you have to share this idea with the others, and you actually have to have a bit of harmony with the people who are not so intimately connected with what you do. So they are the investors, they want to come in, they support you, they trust you, but they don't share maybe the same level of enthusiasm, and definitely they don't share the same level of expertise in your particular topic and in your particular business. So it's important to understand how to set these relations right. Secondly, the investment makes lasting changes, and you cannot simply reverse it, which means it's not just an agreement and you do it, and then if you don't like it, then you get out of it. mean, it's not easy to get out of it because once you make an investment, you commit to something, you give some rights to the investor, and usually it's not possible to unilaterally reverse it. So there's no going back in simple terms. So this is why you should take your time before signing any actual documents. Then number 3, investment. I mean, of course, everybody is in it for the money, as they say, but it's not just about money. I mean, investment brings a change of control of the company, a change in the, let's say, information because it's shared with the investor, and it brings a new set of rules which you have to adapt to. So it's quite a different thing. So what is a term sheet? Well, the name itself, the word itself. So the principal elements and rules, which is the term of an investment, which are agreed between the founders and the investors and are presented as a summary document, which is called a sheet, like a piece of paper, of the key elements. Why do we have a term sheet and not just a contract? Well, a contract, as you probably know if you've seen a number of contracts, can be long, boring, and hard to, let's say, fish out the important parts. The term sheet tries to make the process a bit simpler because it gives you one place, like a table, where you have the principal terms. It says the amount of investment, who invests, what's the date, what are the principal terms, what are the main contractual clauses, and then it's easier when you put this paper in front of yourself to negotiate and say, I don't like clause number 4, let's increase the investment amount, let's reduce, I don't know, the runway, etc. So this is something which is like an aid for, let's say, normal people, founders and investors to go through the terms, and once they have agreed on the term sheet, they can proceed to sign the actual legal paperwork, and this is when the deal gets closed or actually done. So term sheet generally is non-binding except some of the provisions, and in some cases it's actually a summary of what you've agreed to. And then once you have the term sheet completed, then you start the process of actually drafting the legal paperwork. Okay, so how does it work? Well, it's proposed by one side. In case of the first investment round, it may be, of course, the founders if they know how to propose it and how to draft it, or it can be the investors if there's a group of investors with experience who have their terms and approach a startup. It's then being negotiated, which means that you go through every single provision with the counterpart, try to agree to something which suits both of you. Probably there will be a bit of going back and forth, but in the end, you should be able to agree. And this is why the whole idea and the look of the term sheet should help you, because you see what you're talking about very simply. Once it's agreed, then it's signed, which serves, I would say, as some kind of reminder until the actual legal document, the final transaction documents are signed. Of course, there are some binding parts of the term sheet, so don't think you can just rip it up and forget about it after signing. One maybe word about the other, so the final part. So the legal document, which will be actually the basis of the transaction, when we draft it as a more comprehensive and legally binding agreement, it will contain a lot of provisions, and it will actually contain a lot of words for maybe just one single row of the term sheet. And this is why we say the devil is in the details, because getting from a 3-page document like a term sheet to a 50-page document like a investment agreement or a shareholders agreement is also a process, and the process during which some things may go wrong. So we usually say hire a legal advisor, but of course not just legal. You should get a financial advisor if you need, if you have problems with understanding valuation and understanding, what the commercial or the financial terms mean, and also have a tax advisor, especially if you have a cross-border investor or cross-border investment structure. Okay, so who is who in the term sheet? Well, there are basically 2 parties. Unfortunately, I found a picture with 2 men. Of course, it's not some kind of, I would say, bias, but actually this was the picture which I managed to find. So we have the founder of the company, of the project, who's the entrepreneur. I don't know what form is like this, but never mind. So the differences in their position, and of course, the differences in their interest and in I would say their approach. So the founder, as I said, understands the project, is very optimistic, is ready to take on the world, but of course he needs funds at a certain stage, but of course maybe more than funds. may need guidance and advice, especially if this is a younger person who may not have had enough experience in the business world before that. What do they offer? They offer a share of the future profit of the company, so a share of the future success if it will happen. But they also need to balance the immediate needs and the upcoming investment round, because you all know that investment, I mean, the fundraising and investment is not just one-time process. It's something which happens in a number of series. And of course, it's easy and maybe it's easy to be blindsided, you know, at the beginning. They say, I would like to raise more money now, and then don't have to raise any money later. This is, I would say, a misconception. So maybe do not get too greedy or don't have too big expectations at the beginning, because you will give up a part of your equity, a part of your control. Don't give it all up in the first investment round. Leave something to go around for the next, because progressively your company will grow and you will need to keep a bit which you can share later. So like don't spend everything at your first possibility. On the other side, we have the investor who has funds, who is ready to accept a significant risk, because investing in startups, as many of you as investors know, is not an easy thing. It's not just like putting your money in the bank. It actually involves a lot of times being very disappointed and losing a lot of money. But of course, we offer the upside and hope that one of these investments is going to go well. An investor, especially a senior one, somebody who is seasoned in the industry, can offer a lot of experience and advice to the startup. So this is in addition to the money, and really the investors can offer really life-saving sometimes advice, and actually they will help maybe startup and founders themselves to mature into business people who can run not just the idea but run an actual company. And also, the investor may not have perfect knowledge about the project or about the industry, but this should not stop anybody from investing, because actually, you know, you invest in people, not just in ideas or projects. If you trust the people, if you trust the founders, you may not have to understand to the tiniest detail what they actually do or what they want to achieve, but still, if you trust them, then you will finance, you will invest, and then hope that they will achieve what they say. So the usual question is it about money only? I think this is fundraising, you know, give us the money and we can all go home. But no, it's not so simple. Okay, so what do people, I would say, exchange in this investment round? Well, the founder is the person who gives and should share the vision. So the idea of how this project should look like in 5-10 years. Also his commitment, so he has an obligation. I mean, once you accept fundraising, you accept investors, you should actually work on this project, and you have some kind of moral, financial, and even maybe a legal ability to try to make things work. You share information because you have to be open, you have to share also your problems, your risks, also not so pleasant stuff, inform them about mistakes, etc. You share, of course, a bit of control, directly or indirectly, and of course, you will share the part of the future profit if there will be any. On this investment side, of course, he gives the money, which seems like the most useful stuff at the beginning, but he can also provide guidance and advice. If he's in your industry or a similar industry, he can provide you with networking opportunities, with leads, with clients, customers, business partners, etc. And also the investor has to give, I would say, a lot of trust and a lot of patience, because it's a long-term process. So it's not something where you expect turnover in a year or two. So it's going to take patience, and the investors need to know, you know, to give you some breathing space, to give you some time to develop your ideas. What are I would say, the key elements of a term sheet? I mean, we have the document, as I said, it's going to be online in the repository. You can all read it. We put it up as a basic document, which is like a template, and also explanatory note, which gives a short explanation on the particular terms. I think we do not have the time to go through each particular term in detail now, but please consult the document when it will be online. And of course, if there are any questions, I think everybody from Cross Startup or myself and my office can give you some replies. Regarding the basic, I would say, terms, we have the economic elements, which means like the financial or the money elements, and these reply to the question who gets what, so the shares or the money, and what price. The second part of provisions, there's control over shares in relation to future rounds, which means like how will things change when the company needs another financing round. The third part of the term sheet is usually dedicated to corporate governance, which means who makes decisions in running the company. And now we will have some more details about each of these parts. So let's start with the investment amount, because this is, I would say, what's on everybody's mind at the very beginning. So this is the amount of funds which will be received by the company. And under significance, I put a question. So is this amount of money sufficient to realize the goal and cover the costs until sustainable revenue is generated, or until the next investment round? So this is what you should discuss with the investor. But as I said earlier, don't necessarily, overdo it, because there will be subsequent rounds. So we leave something for the future. The question of valuation, we have pre-money and post-money valuation, which means like how much the company prior to the investment or after the investment. And of course, there's a formula which says how much will the investor get compared to the valuation of the company and the invested amount. Also, there is this, I would say, much feared provision called valuation preference, which is actually very important because it sets out the priority in distribution of assets or proceeds in case of, let's say, future sale of the company. I will try to keep it simple and say that the standard now is 1 hectare, which means that the investor should get the invested amount prior to the founders getting anything. But of course, the investors sometimes try to get a higher or preferential dips into the proceeds, which in some extreme cases mean actually the company solving it successfully, that the investors will be getting all the proceeds and the founders will be getting little or next to none. So this is one provision you should all take care of. Secondly, the second group of provisions is the one related to control over shares in relation to future rounds. There's a lot of provisions, I can talk about them a bit, but the thing is that investors want to be protected, because especially in an early stage, they know that they're taking a huge risk in investing into this company. The company may grow, and now they have like a double risk. The first risk is that the company goes under and you don't receive anything, and then everybody loses out. The second, I would say, risk, but it's also an opportunity, is that the company grows very fast, attracts new investors, has a significantly higher valuation in a future round, and which then, by, let's say, a VC fund, and then the original investors are completely diluted because they invested, I don't know, 1x, and then somebody comes and invests 30 times that much. So the investors try to protect themselves by introducing provisions such as pro rata participation in future rounds, right of first refusal in case of sale of shares, tag along, drag along. They can also want some provisions about the profit or dividend policy, etc. So there will be, I would say, an incentive by the investors to basically put their foot in the door. So basically to be sure that in case of future financing, they will be able to retain a part of the forward profit or gain some benefit. And then the third part, which is, I would say, in this boring stuff, at the beginning, is the corporate governance. The corporate governance may not seem so important at the very beginning, because in the initial rounds, the investors will probably not want to meddle too much into the company because it's still a startup, the founders are doing all the work, etc. Later, as the company gets more structured, and actually when an equity is issued, so when convertible instruments are converted into equity, then we get into these kind of like discussions about board composition, which means does an investor have a right to appoint a representative of the board, which means part of the management board of the company. What are their voting rights? What are the reserve matters, which means matters in which an investor or investors can veto, saying that basically they can sometimes stop the company founders from making some significant changes. So these are all degrees of investor protection and need to be balanced. Also, I would like to draw attention to the so-called ESOP, or the employee share option plan, which means there's a pool of shares which is set aside at the beginning, and it's intended to motivate and incentivize key employees of the company. Of course, there's a balance. As I said, if it's too large, it will be additional dilution of the funds, and they will actually retain less of their own company than they want. If it's too small, it may not be enough to incentivize the key employees, because you know that good people are hard to find. You have to offer them something. At an early stage of a startup, you cannot offer, I would say, necessarily very competitive salaries. But what you can offer is the share options and saying, okay, you will get, I don't know, 0.25% of this company, which is expected to be worth millions or billions in a couple of years. And this is a good way to do it. But also, I mean, the investors, since everybody shares the same, I would say 100% of shares, and it has to be enough for everyone. The investors will also probably have an opinion about the share option. So this is where the topic worth discussing. After this, we come to the legally binding provision. So the part before is the part of your agreement with the investors, and say in general that it's not necessarily to sign the final transaction documents. However, it is wise to put in some of the provisions which are legally binding from the outset, and these I will talk about them briefly. One of them is applicable law. I mean, this is definitely important in a cross-border setting, as we all know here. We have investors from different countries, we have startups from different countries. They may not always have the same understanding of the provisions, and if you have to interpret them or go to court, then the question of applicable law is important. So, general advice: don't pick a law, by heart, or don't copy from a template on the internet, except our template. But don't use an exotic law. I mean, do something which you know, which is predictable, and where you can hire advisors who can tell you what you expect from this law. Also for the dispute resolution, because unfortunately disputes do arise and people do get into fights, it's important to know who will be deciding this. So this, of course, is linked to applicable law, but also you can have German law, but also set an arbitration tribunal or Croatia. So try not to also to be very exotic here. Try to choose something which you know, which you expect to be efficient and predictable. The question of expenses, I mean, there may or may not be significant expenses in a fundraising stage, but at the later stage of investment or financing, they can be quite significant because the investors for sure will hire external advisors, financial, tax, legal, etc. And sometimes they will try to ask or to force the company to take on these expenses after the financing, which means basically that the part of the money which is invested in the company will be immediately spent on the advisors who were actually giving advice to the investor, which means that actually you get a bit less or significantly less money than you intended. So always try to get that each part covers their own expenses and not that the company is burdened with that. Confidentiality provisions, which are important because they also link with the exclusivity or no shop. I mean, the terms of the investment, I mean, it's free market, but sometimes it may be important that you get a good deal, and then you might be, as a founder, able to find some other investors and say, look, these guys are ready, this amount of money, this valuation, can you do any better? So usually, it would be prudent to confidentiality provisions, which says that you basically cannot run around with the terms, disclose all the details, disclose the financing provisions, and try to get a better deal. This links with the exclusivity, which basically is a commitment by the founders that they will give a certain period of time, several weeks or even several months, in which they will not negotiate with other potential investors. So they will give these investors some time to close and finalize the investment under the terms in the term sheet. Okay. I just wanted to show you. So this is how the document looks like. I mean, this is how our template looks like. So it's in bilingual Croatian and English. We put the terms which we want the users to fill out on the sides, and in the center you can fill them in. There's a explanatory note with, let's say, with a proposal for an invented startup, just to see how you should fill it out. These documents, as I said, will be on the startup website. And then maybe you will have now the idea, okay, great, somebody drafted the document, it's now online, I just have to fill it up and sign. Actually, it's not that simple. So despite having the template or model, model, I mean, it's not applicable for every situation, and you will have to think about it. You will have to read it. Every investment and every startup is different and specific. You are also choosing the people, not just the documents. As I said, you should balance the immediate needs and your future flexibility. You should read the fine print and, of course, talk to the other founders and investors. I mean, this is, I would say, step one, because other people have done it. They have done it under different terms. Sometimes they make mistakes. Sometimes they had great ideas. So talk to them, exchange experience, ideas, and then after hearing all this, see whether this fits for yourself. And of course, ask for legal, financial, and tax advice, especially when things get more serious, when you're going into subsequent rounds with VC funds and professional investors, because you will need advice to understand what is going on. And that's it as an introduction. Thank you everyone for your attention.
So my question is, which law jurisdictions you usually put in term sheet, and which for issues, and especially can you put, for example, United States law and the dispute location court in London?
Oh, you can, but I mean, I'm a Croatian lawyer, so of course I know and practice Croatian law. So I would advise my clients to use Croatian law, not because it's the best or the most flexible, but because this is the law where I can provide advice and I would say some predictability. I know that there is, I would say, a trend maybe to use, I don't know, Delaware law or law in the US and to use US words, which is okay, but that means that, I mean, if you're a founder in Croatia, in case of a dispute, you will have to hire and pay a US lawyer, which maybe is and just maybe to answer the last part of your question, I would not suggest to combine the applicable law of one country and the courts of another country. I think that's a recipe for a lot of complications.
Hi, first of all, China ranges. Great presentation. Just wanted to ask for the clarification. So, term sheet is not legally binding, right?
Generally, no. I mean, of course, you have a duty to negotiate in good faith. So, as I told you, you don't sign it and then rip it up and say, I don't want to talk to you ever again. But the term sheet by itself is not the moment when the money. So, the term sheet is something which will give you, I would say, breathing space and some time for the usually lawyers to draft the actual transaction documents, which have to be signed. And at that point, the deal is closed and the money comes in.
Basically, the investment contract is whatever you want to call it. It's signed. Every side can withdraw from the term sheet because of any reason, but the term sheet is basically a proper foundation for the future investment contract to be signed, right?
That's right. But I would say it's kind of like, in a way, a preliminary agreement. I mean, not to get into the details, but I would definitely, as a lawyer, not advise somebody to just give up on a signed document like a term sheet. So you have to have faith in negotiating things. And once you commit to something, you should have a really overriding objective reason to withdraw.
Hello, I would ask you, when is the right time for signing with VC? So how much information to give?
Yeah, well, regarding NDAs, I would say as early as possible. So I think after, introduced to an investor, it doesn't have to be a VC, even if it's an angel investor or private investor, I would suppose or propose that everybody signs an NDA, because I would say it doesn't cost you anything, and it's very, I would say, necessary step for divulging information, especially if you're a founder, if you're at an early stage, so you don't have any patent, you maybe don't have enough IP. There is a lot of value in know-how, and before divulging and explaining it, why is this so good, you should be protected by NDA. So don't wait.
Hi, Philip. One question regarding this NDA thing you said. So if you sign an NDA with a potential investor that is possible investing in a company and investment doesn't go on, typically he's bound not to invest or not to even talk with similar company what happens in your business in future. So, for example, if you fail investment, he cannot invest in the same business or your competitor in future because he's buying by NDA and he cannot basically use his skills in future business development and other startup.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily put it that way. So I mean, the NDA stops you from basically disclosing the specific information which you receive from a party. So like, let's say if I'm an investor in a startup, I sign an NDA and they say that, I don't know, they invented a cure for cancer and they don't tell me the cost how it's made. I'm not allowed to disclose this. This does not mean that I cannot talk to another startup in this field, but I cannot, the information which I received for the purpose of evaluating my investment to a third party. I still have this information in my head. I can compare it to some other, but I must not disclose it to anybody.
Hi, I'm Marco from Motu. A lot of times I've heard and a lot of times I've read on LinkedIn that especially VCs aren't that keen on signing NDAs and non-compete for the reason he said. So what's your take? Should we use these as a filter mechanism and just filter out, stop talking to investors that aren't keen on talking or signing an NDA? Or should we boil down all the things that we can disclose but still aren't that giving away the secret sauce?
Sure. I mean, it's hard to give a general reply to this, but let's say you should have some kind of info memo, some kind of presentation which you can share without an NDA, because then you should hook up the potential investors and they should at that point in time be ready to sign an NDA before you disclose anything. Whether you can allow yourself to filter out everybody who seems less cooperative at the beginning, I don't know, and it's also a commercial question, depends on the market. But I think a fair investment fund should have no problem in signing it. I mean, I know that some do, but I think for them it shouldn't hurt them.
Hello. So Igor from Projects. Maybe it's just my, let's say, different experience or understanding of the matter. But in my experience, almost no serious investors ever prepare to sign an NDA. It's just my experience because they see too many projects and the NDA opens them up to legal liability if they want to talk to a different company, which is similar to the company that's pitching to them. But again, it's maybe just my subjective view. I just want to share.
Yeah, well, possible. I mean, the market is different, and I would say, especially in Croatia, the ecosystem is still developing. So I understand that even the VCs, I mean, maybe some do not fully understand. Maybe some are actually using their position towards the companies because the market is not so big. There are not so many funds, and of course they can impose, I would say, their views. But I understand that. But as I told you, I mean, if you're a founder, I would try to in some way protect my IP and not disclose too much, because you never know whether an investment is actually going to be realized or not.
My comment on that is that I think it depends. You said if you have a cure for cancer, or you have a brand new algorithm that's something completely new, then the whole value of the company is in that information. Then I expect you should ask for this NDA. But if you're doing a generic SaaS application like the next Stripe, next Airbnb, come on. From idea to execution, that's the whole difference.
Yeah, that's usually I say that everything depends, but of course.
Yeah, just a quick comment from my side. From my experience, it really depends on your phase. So if you are really early phase and you're still in ideation, being very strict about NDAs means that you are afraid to actually talk about your idea. And that implies that you are maybe afraid to talk about your idea with anybody else. So that means that you didn't even validate it. If your later phase and you really have something that you can show, then you can show the value without disclosing the algorithm or whatever that is. So that's why it sometimes when you are very early facing a VC with an NDA, that's a deterrent from the VC side. Not only that's from my experience. Just a comment on the question. So.
We have to stop the questions. I know it could last all night long because this is a topic that is very hot. That if we want to have the panel and also the Philippines and pizza, then we need to break it up. But thank you, Dean, very much. And now, before I give the mic to Mariana, just a quick comment from my side. There's nothing to do with term sheets, but it has to do with the Croatian Startup Ecosystem Association that we are welcoming to the support of each and every one of you. So if you haven't become a member yet, please do so. There is a nice poster with a QR code there where you can fill out the application form. There is a yearly fee, but it is 500 kunas, so it's not that. And as you can see, we do provide food and beverage. And it would really mean because we are trying to connect and create the community so we can really share the knowledge and experiences and resources and do stuff like this, so create templates that everyone can use. So please, if you still haven't, do become a member. Now I'm gonna give the mic to Mariana, who's gonna lead the wonderful panel and she's gonna introduce the panelists.
Thank you, Heidi. So the idea is that you all become members, because next time when we go to any governmental body, we can take the right figures and we can have the right data. Because for the moment, we are not really having the right data. So you can only imagine how hard it is to provide. I'm really honored to have today 3 really experienced founders who will share their insights in term sheet in their lives and how term sheet changed their lives, because term sheet is the subject of this meetup. So my pleasure is to introduce the lady on the panel, Nika Pinter from Cibrani. Nika, please come. Then we have another gentleman, Dan Kirsch from Netherlands. For the panel, we have Darko Jovic from Robotic, but not just Darko from Robotic. He's also one of our executive board members. So he's the one. To volunteer to run the Founders Circle. So the next meetup, this is the reason I'm telling that aloud. So the next meetup is to be organized, and also the idea is to use this association really to build the founders community and to use the experience, knowledge, know-how we already have. And Darko will lead the way. So Darko is the next host. Also.
Challenge accepted.
I'm a lawyer, so I always use it. Some people, of course. There's so many witnesses and people document. And if you all have also you're done. So, first of all, for those who don't know the guys on the stage and the lady on the stage, I want you to tell me about your startup and where you are in this, let's say, in this investment, this visual circle, because whenever you're a startup, you're always racing. So Nika, please, can you just grab the mic and tell us something about your startup?
So hello everyone, my name is Nika. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Cibrani and Anibio. We are personalizing metabiotics for longevity. And regarding investments, we are just closing one safe note round of funding, and we are already preparing for next year's 5 million round. So it's a very exciting times. We already started preparing or developing the network of investors because investment is never a single point in time. It always takes time to build relationships, to show results, and we are building a very result-driven culture in our team. Okay. Damir, you?
Hi everyone, my name is Damir Fietsch. I'm a co-founder of Meetup, which is a company, it's a startup which is creating digital toys and companions. I'm also doing BD for Labs, which is our sister company, which is creating a decentralized protocol for collaborative spatial computing. This is about yeah, it is, but basically.
So we can learn new words.
Yeah, so what we're creating is we're creating decentralized protocol for collaborative spatial computing, meaning that we want to create shared AR experiences, which can be immediately hop on, hop off, meaning that you can scan a QR code and be in a space where you will see stuff in AR that other people also see. And this is a pretty big problem that many big companies are solving. And because of that, we had quite a successful year last year when we were combining, actually, we divided our two companies and we separately raised Atlas, which is the infrastructure, and we also raised Atlas, which is creating a flagship product in terms of creating toys and companions. And we did the seed round where we raised for Atlas, we raised $1.25 million, which is an equity round. And then we did a private sale where we did a token raise. So on the token raise, we raised $1.9 million at a valuation of $60 million. And then we did another private sale where we raised $3.9 million at a valuation of $80 million. And then for Labs, we did a similar thing. We had 3 rounds, and just long story short, we raised another $13 million. So our combined, we have a pretty, we have a pretty big war chest. We have a pretty big team of over 50 people, out of which 40 people are engineers. We like trying to solve something which is like quite a problem.
A lot of experience to share. Darko, you and your startup.
Yeah. So we create a platform for digital workers, and that's essentially a bot that mimics a user on a computer, and we use that to automate the boring processes inside the company. So copying data, filling out the forms, the boring stuff.
So you're our guy.
So we raised the seed series before a year and a half, so April 2021, $1 million. And we are at the stage where I forgot about the term sheet, and I'm really cool. I don't want to start thinking about it.
What kind of founder you are? If you are not thinking about term sheet.
No, I placed it in a part of my brain.
See, another co-founder thinks you are successful if you are not there thinking about it.
Yeah. So I said to Ivan, this is like a free psychotherapy. I wish there was a couch.
So we would like you, because we are going to answer the next question. How was your experience with the term sheet?
Well, as Tim said, the term sheet is a non-binding offer. So I would say that's only half of the way on your way to the money. So between term sheet and the money on your account, there is, probably 3 months of agonizing. I don't know what's the English word for this design. So basically, you have to go through due diligence, and you have 2 types of due diligence: so financial, legal, and technical. That's the earlier rounds. We have HR and some other. But they're going to pull out every document, every invoice, every agreement, and that's really resource intensive, especially when you're small. And the amount of pain will depend on how your house is in order or not. Or in our case, in some areas it was not. So we had a lot of pain there. And at the end, it finishes up with this pile of documents. I really remember, I think we had a picture somewhere, but I kid you not, the stack was this high. So 3 documents: investment agreement, shareholder agreement, and articles of association. And I would say there are much more detailed in the term sheet. And some of the things that you didn't talk about.
One of the things that Tim mentioned was the rounds. So the pre-seed round, for instance, the idea of the pre-seed round versus the seed round, I think is a significant detail here, which is you're doing a product market fit, and then a seed round where you have an MVP. We started off as a company so in 2019, we were playing Warhammer 40K, which is a tabletop game. And we wanted to do something for this company called Games Workshop. Games Workshop is a company whose stock raised like 20 times in the last 10 years in the UK, because they sell you minis, which you paint and create little armies. And they sell you the paint, they sell you the minis, they sell you everything, they sell you the robots. We were like, wouldn't it be cool if we made something for that? So we started thinking about, can we do something in AR that can help with this game? Well, in this game, people use rulers, like actual rulers for the military units to move. You can think about it as war games from like Napoleonic times, where people just like moving stuff on the board. So we think, I don't know if it has an AR ruler. Maybe we can just make something which is, a shared AR experience. How hard it is. It's very hard. It is extremely hard. Like the asymmetrical experience that you have if you're trying to measure something that somebody else doesn't see is a really, really hard problem to solve. Fortunately, we solved it. By the time we solved it, we had $2,000 in our bank account. Well, we did. We had money because one of our founders put all of his savings into classic, right?
3X around, that's okay.
Yeah. So by the time we create this, means absolutely nothing. But basically, instead of trying to do a mini from this game, we were like, we'll take an animal, like a small animal, a dog, a cat, and we'll show them this in AR. Once we did that, we spoke to one of the founders of My Talking Tom, which is, if you know, the app where that's been downloaded like 8 billion times, like more times than there's people in the world. And he was like, this is your product. Like, you do the animals. So the result was when we started coming to investors, we showed them this idea, they really like the prototype, and then the term sheet, I have to say, like, I'm very proud and very humble at the same time to say that the term sheet that we created, our investors have any disagreements with. Yeah, and we have.
Are basically presented by the investor. Usually it's not the founders who present the document. So usually they are presented the document that you have to really dig in and to see what is behind, especially the ones that show the number of policies that are usually there, but they are also depending on markets, especially in really mature markets, UK, US market. There are really clauses that we can't grasp the concept of here in Croatia, because our legal knowledge, our legal culture experience is completely different, and we are not that mature. So if you are able to draft a document yourself, maybe you should be a lawyer.
One day maybe an honorary doctor. Here's the thing, no, but seriously.
So you basically have no issues between founders of what to accept on the term sheet, because you drafted the term sheet.
We kind of dropped the term sheet, and we also had, so I can offer one other small piece of the story, which is quite significant for us, because once we created this technology, can you guys hear me? So once we created this tech,
We have a principal investor who wanted to. Yes, thank you. So we had a principal investor. I guess it's me. So we create term sheet, and they wanted 12% of the company. So we said this is too much. It was for a very small amount. So what we said, we can't get 12%. What we can get is 6% in 2 companies. And then we decided to separate the infrastructure, which is now this decentralized protocol for spatial computing, and the flagship product, which is toys and games and companions. So effectively, in the moment where we gave 6% of 2 companies for the same amount of money, we doubled our evaluation. And they accepted these terms.
Nika, what about you? I know that you have already experienced term sheet presented by investors. Actually, not yet. We have done our term sheets. We still did not reach the equity round, which I can imagine will also require plenty more paperwork. Yeah, we'll get in touch when it comes to that. But I would like to point out that we do have our first institutional investor, that's EIT Crim Accelerator, that's joining the safe round that we have. So that's really great because they've been following us for quite a while now. Last year, we received a grant from them because of our sustainability impact, because we managed to prove that we reduced carbon footprint by 90% in comparison to similar products. And now they are again following with this round. So that's really, really great acknowledgement. You know, from one year to another, they see the progress, and we were first in the cohort among the startups that they were selecting. Also, I would like to point out that we really gathered a crew of great angels supporting us. I would call them archangels. Really, some of the biggest names, regional and also some outside of Croatia that we have now, and I'm really, really thankful to them. And I would like to point out the support of you, Mariana, Tim, who is also one of our investors, Luka Bruce was our lead investor, who really helped us out in a lot of matters, because at the end of the day, a lot of the problems, so to say, on paper are just people relations. So it's just about finding a way how to approach it, maybe try a different angle, try to find a different solution, etc. Thinking outside the box, and at the end of the day, once you figure it out, navigate it, then just writing it in a proper manner.
And this is a great intro to the question. I sent you an email with the potential questions, and this is exactly what I wanted to, for the crowd, and also get to you to take out from here. The term sheet is only a piece of paper, and behind them are people, founders, who have to agree what they are going to get for that round of investment, and investors, and basically you're not getting marriage, because especially in the early stages, when they see potential, they are bringing the know-how, they are bringing their money, hopefully smart money, and it's more about people and not about the document. Still, the document has to reflect what you have agreed, in order when the new ones join, either on the founder side, employee side, or on investor side, that everything is clear. So it's super important that you, as founders, know what you are offering to investors. And this is usually the part when you have more founders, they don't have the common standing when they approach investors. And when the documents such as term sheet comes into this place, especially the part with figures and Excel sheet, everybody knows that, it comes really, really hard. And many of the investments basically break up not because of the deal structure, but because of what the people are behind. So I think the words you share with us are basically really the key stuff that you have to remember about any legal document, because there are always people behind it and relationship that you want to basically to would say, definitely a lot. So, please, Ms. Lopez.
Yeah, if I can add something here, because at the end of the day, it's really just about people. So sometimes it's much better to refuse money than to get into a relationship, getting involved with someone who you know, might not want to share your future with, because this is more than a marriage. You might accept, I don't know, some amount of money, no matter how much it may seem at that point that it would be really great to just have it on your account. But then think about the future. Is this really the sort of person you want to be in a relationship with? I think that's a key point to address. Of course, always when talking about investments, there's a question of valuations. And basically, you know, there's a saying, just go to UK, add one decimal and 1 0, then go to the US, add another one. And it's really about where you want to place yourself, because you need money. And we were now in Switzerland at Longevity Investors Conference, and the people there, you know, when we said the amount of money we were raising and what valuations, etc., some of them laughed, because it would do no good to now give you the small check, they said, because you need more for global domination. What's your global domination plan? Like, tell me, what is the strategy to have your product in each and every household in this world? And that's a really valid question, because we are devoting our whole lives to this. We're not just, it's not a 8 to 5 sort of job. It's something that consumes you, that requires plenty of devotion, and you're doing something no one has ever done ever before in the world. So you need money to fuel it, and valuation is just, you need to find a way, you know, whatever valuation you say, they will always look at you like you're a maniac. No, they will just stare at you and like, and you must be ready for it. You must be like so certain in that moment of the number you set, and just stand behind it. You know, it's a good thing to, you know, stand up a little bit earlier in the morning and just practice in front of a mirror, because you need to be so certain of it in that moment. And the first time we say it, it needs to scare you. If it doesn't scare you, then that's perhaps not the right amount, and you should consider it bigger.
You were talking about, I was just thinking before you said that term sheet is like a green article.
Yes.
And, yeah, and you must consider the phrase when you're signing the term sheet. It's mostly very positive. You know, you're all in good faith. You're have this connection with the investor, and you're just launching your product and you're going to take over the world, and you're very enthusiastic. But actually, most of the contracts are provisions when things go bad, and usually in that state, it's okay, it's a standard thing. But basically, you forget all the bad things that happen. So I would suggest that you focus more on these clauses. And I would like to touch upon the valuation topic, because that's like, I feel that most of the founders are solely fixated on this single thing, but they forget about all the other things. And I would actually go in defense of VCs here. So I would contradict your statement there. So I think, valuation, whatever number you have, it's not, nobody in the world would pay that kind of money for a company. That's a made up figure. That's a made up figure. Go ask, I don't know, King or Combis or whoever, would they buy the company for that amount? None, not in a chance. So your company is probably worth 10 times less, even so. So you must be aware of that. So the figure is completely arbitrary, because at that point, there's no financial data on your company. There's no, recurring revenue. There's nothing. There's a bunch of people with a huge enthusiasm and faith. And that's all they have, is you in front of them. And so this figure is completely arbitrary. And I would argue if you just focus on that you're missing the big picture. So if you are going in a VC track, you're going to go see A, B, C, D. So expect that you will be diluted all along the way. So trying to fight over valuation that will end up, probably 0.5% in the end, and trying to hassle over that, I think it's overrated. So I would actually put more focus, these are the people that you want to work with. Are they really going to help you, grow your business? Because they all say they are smart money and they have connections, but in most cases it's not true. So I think we should validate that really thoroughly. Also, there's a danger in having a too high valuation, and that's probably when you cut it down round. So if you say your company now is at whatever 10 million, and in the next round you not meet your expectations, the next investor is not going to offer a higher valuation. And then there is this clause that was not mentioned in the actual term sheet. It's called anti-dilution, and that basically prevents the investor from losing their share, and it's going to go on your expense. So if you go way too high and you're really super high at this valuation, it might backfire on the next round. So I would really argue, I think it's important, but don't like spend all time thinking about that and try to think about other causes as well.
Your comment. You probably have something to say on this.
Something I think Gio said earlier, it's not about the idea, it's about the execution. If we see invest in people, in founders, that's it. It's not about the product, it's not about how you're going to change the world. Do you have the know-how to build the thing that you want to build? Like that's where we practice our storytelling in a way where the things that we think are in the future, our vision, is so clear that when people hear that, they feel like they already understand what we're talking about, which I totally contradicted by explaining what we do. But the point is this: something that we ourselves want to see in the world is a privacy-preserving way to create AR content, which is not going to have Google look at you, look through your AR glasses into your bed. So when we talk to our investors, this is a key point for why we want to build our version of a decentralized AR world. It has a lot of traction. Like it gets a lot of traction. People get very excited about it because these massive companies, they kind of just assume that we will give up our privacy, and for most people it really doesn't matter. But once they can measure the evolution of your retina response to looking at your partner in the bedroom and knowing that you don't find them attractive anymore, then it becomes a really serious problem.
Do they let you know, or?
Well, I mean, they'll let you know in the things that they offer you, in your private personal life. Yeah. So I would my point is that it's really important to have a vision and to really be clear about what it is that you want to do. And I think this sounds so cliche, but it's like are your values aligned about the things you want to do, and then you will find the investors who are going to put money into your project.
This is exactly my next question, because this is the part when you do the first term sheet. If you draft it yourself and they accept it, great. If you are offered and then you negotiate, that's also great. But the next round is going to look that you are going to sit on the table together with your first line of investors, and the newcomers will be on the other side of the table. So you basically not only have to align with your founders, but your investors become your founders, so to say. And this is maybe the part, I know that Darko had with Ivan, they had experience how they managed to negotiate as they are founders, they have to agree on what they are going to offer. And did you have any obstacles, or did you agree smoothly? So how was your experience negotiating with investors, having in mind that they will become your, let's say, frenemies soon?
I must say it was not such a bad experience actually negotiating with them. What we noticed, I think, with the regional funds is that they have some provisions that I would say are maybe not so standard in US based or UK based investment. So I think most of the regional funds, what they will try to pull is a staged investment. So they will offer, if you're raising 2 million, whatever, they will say, I will give you 1 million for at this valuation for this percent, and then if you achieve agreed goals or agreed KPIs, then we will proceed to the next phase of investment. Now, this has pros and cons. I would say the pro is that your team and founders are really motivated to keep the thing going because you're actually depending on the next batch of money coming into a company. But also that has a downside because goals can change, and you can pivot and you can do and maybe you're completely missing some other point. And you're just really focused by whatever it is, revenue, number of users, or whatever. But you're maybe actually missing some other big thing, and you're just focused on achieving that goal. So that's a big danger, I would say. So I would try to avoid that as much as possible. We had that clause, but we managed to achieve that. But also, if you have a certain goal, so what it means if you're at 85%, is it complete failure or not? And then you're in their race, so to say, if they think it's okay or not okay. So that was one part where I had some doubts, I would say. Second part, where I had things to add that were not there, and it was mostly more on the things that happened and that were not there. So I was thinking, I don't know, I can go outside, and I can get hit by a bus.
What would happen?
What would happen with my equity? And you will sign a provision. Basically, when you sign the investment agreement, you are vesting your shares. You are not any longer the owner of your percent. You have to earn that for a certain period. And there's a provision called bad leaver. Basically, if you scam the money, if you do some bad things, you will have to return your shares back to the investors. Now, I said, if God forbid I die or whatever, I don't want to be classified as a bad leaver. It's something, force.
This is
The legal term, force majeure, where I don't want to be, I want to, if I spend, 5 years of my life, I want my kids, my wife, my family to benefit from that. So that was one of the provisions that was not there, and I really asked the lawyers, to cover these kind of scenarios. And the VC was like, why are you confident? This is not standard. I said, these things can happen, and I want to be protected. So that was also one thing, and I'm especially annoyed with the legal costs. That's not just really rude.
and we really charge to it. This is my personal experience. Because when the bar is raised, and it will be raised, the expenses will go up because the liability goes up.
Oh, definitely. I'm not.
Everyone's liability goes up.
I'm really mad about the clause where the fund actually imposes on the
No,
startup
this is
to bear the cost.
This is awful because
their
basically they are cannibalizing their own, and I don't understand why they do that.
Because they live off management fees.
Yeah.
You're
Also,
cutting into their
this is the
profits.
structure of the fund, so Bosch is probably taking the notes. So I did everything I could. Probably they won't repeat the mistake, but this is something that came out as bad banking practice. Because when I used to be banking finance lawyer, at the beginning of the story, it was completely normal that everybody bears its own expenses. At some point in time, Hungarian bank decided that they are going to charge the borrower, nevertheless, if the investment goes or fails. And everybody was outraged. But then the Lehman Brothers came, and everybody was like, this is great, we can charge the borrower, even if we don't give them the loans. And it's awful because it became the practice in the last 14, 15 years. So this is definitely something that you have to make about. I don't know how successful you are going to be
No.
because, yeah, because the thing is that they are basically cannibalizing their own investment because they are asking from you, especially in the due diligence phase, to have a certain level of expertise, let's say, first or second tier of the experts, bring fees that are aligned with our expertise and liabilities, and that could really drop down the.
There's also a question of due diligence costs, which can also be substantial. So you have to hire someone to cover your books. You have to hire someone who will do the technical due. So that can also be a question, who bears those costs as well. Lastly, I would mention drag along as an important clause. And this is the case where when the things don't work out the way they should have. And you must understand that VCs operate on a certain number of years. And it depends where you actually enter into their portfolio. And in most cases, it's 8 to 10 years. And let's say you entered in year 4 of the fund. That means, and if the fund is like raised on 8 years, that means after 4 years, they will go out. They will do an exit, forced exit.
Yeah.
So imagine a case, you are not ready for next round, whatever the reason. And after 4 years, they have to pay. They have to pay the money to their investors, and they will sell, your company to whomever on the street will give them the biggest money. And that might not be the person that
You have that preemption clause, but it won't help because you can't raise the money to buy back
So
the
you can, I
shares.
don't know,
Yeah.
10 million.
And this is also the question of valuation.
So you have to understand that, at some point, if you don't succeed, but you will be forced actually to sell majority of your stake to somebody that you don't. So that's I'm not trying to speak.
No, but this is very important because as we said, it's about humans and it's also about scenario playing. You have to, as you dream big when you do your products and services, you have to dream big also about all the potential scenarios, good and bad.
Dream
Because-
small.
I won't say it. But Nika, you have some experience and I think especially in power, I think first the mechanism of reaching the decision, and if you don't agree with your co-founder, do you make him accept that investor or you agree not to go there? This is the first one, or maybe some your experience with the investors. I think you can definitely share that this is a lesson that you managed to squeeze out from, but still it was very dangerous. There's another one.
Well, first of all, my co-founder is right there.
Yes.
So- Hello, Bruno. We somehow, I don't know if it's because we're also private partners as well as business partners, but we somehow always reach a mutual decision quite easily. We might, discuss it a little bit, but being, in the gut business, we follow our gut feeling. That's quite. Seeing as we lower our inflammation daily with our fermented microdrinks.
So
and we're
you
quite well. It helps. No, we say literally one day, I really see a world in which before we make any serious deals, investments, marriages, whatever, you will be able to get the anti-metabolic score based on someone's stool sequencing, based on their inflammation levels, because it really impacts a lot of things. Your blood glucose curves influence your emotional reactions, your hormones.
Test your investors.
Yeah, definitely. That's what we are going to do. What we are building is a decision-making tool. Of course, it's the long run, but it will become the standard and the norm because our levels of vitality and energy, that's truly important. And that's actually, you want to be in a relationship with someone who has maybe even greater abundance and diversity of bacteria in their gut, because that's really correlated with longevity and overall health. But going back to the topic, when it comes to legal stuff, it's always really important to think of the uncomfortable scenarios that no one wants to discuss, like death of a person, or if it's a company investing, what if the company goes bankrupt? What is your situation? And it's really important to take some time because the answer will not come, within 1 hour. Sometimes you just need to draft it. I'm usually the one drafting it. I'm here today. I'm the one taking care of all the paperwork. So I usually write it down, think of the scenario. I call you, Mariana, Dean. I call Diana, who is handling our accounting, finances, and now business plan and everything. And she's a EU grant master. So if you're looking to get some EU funding as well, but Diana is quite oversubscribed, I would say. So I try to take a look, at different sides, what's the legal aspect of it, what's the taxation aspect of it, what is, the standard procedures, and how can a startup actually navigate through it and find a way that's the most efficient, takes the least time, because you don't want to find yourself in a situation where due to some legal complications, you're not able to receive new investments, or to be in a situation where you would just need to spend too much time on lawyers, lawyer fees, etc., going really high. So it's really great to just think about such scenarios before things happen and just write something. What do we do in such a case?
Simple, even providing examples, what you actually think when you're referring to something. And this is completely okay. To put examples, so don't avoid examples. Then you have something to also add to this topic, probably.
The only thing that I will say is pay the legal fees. No,
I didn't pay you to say that.
No, seriously, get the experts. Like, if you're building a business, knowing this is great, maybe you don't have time. Get somebody who gets it, somebody you trust, a legal advisor, and have them go over it.
So tax advisor and financial or technical, whatever, because they have the expertise and want to build a serious business.
One of our first hires after we paid our legal fees for the patent, and we got some of our first investment, was a legal advisor, a financial advisor, and a head of HR. That's it. Like, that's the first things we spent money on.
I think we are almost 45 minutes, so I think that we should take questions. Yeah. So Heidi says questions, ask questions.
Maybe just one comment before.
Yeah, you comment one, I find
So
questions.
there's a book, it's called Venture Deals. And it was recommended by Luca, my colleague. And that really helped me to actually understand all the clauses and how VCs operate. So I would suggest, before embarking on that, just read the book, and I think you'll get a lot of experience from that.
Repeat the name of the book again.
Venture Deals.
Venture deals. Okay. Going through the this letter.
That's
That's a good idea. Questions?
Hi, my name is Marco. So the question would be, could you give us a few examples of clauses where that were controversial with the investors you were talking with and which you prevailed, and a couple of examples in which the investor prevailed? And how did you make your decision? Like, was it a gut decision, or was it something that was simply, some kind of a compromise?
I could just give a general comment on that. So most of the VCs have standard contracts, standard term sheets. So I think they're all just copy pasting from each other, more or less. And I think you'll have a hard time actually, taking out a certain. You cannot take out drag along or liquidation. That's not gonna happen.
Standard of the industry.
Standard of the industry, and you must accept what you're getting into. And the only thing you can actually negotiate is maybe some levels of that. This percent or that percent or this. So, but you're not gonna go, very far from the straight line that you're going to. So I don't have an example where we really fought like for months over some clause. So these are like fine details, but nothing comes to my mind that's really like substantial that we fought them. So
screw you, the deal is off. So there was nothing like that, but it's mostly about deals and back and forth. So I would say, yeah, patience. Yeah. And I agree with that. You know, once you pass the term sheet, hire a legal advisor because they have the grit actually to go to really find details and then really negotiate with the contract. Try to focus on building a good relationship with the investor instead of fighting over some small stuff.
There was a story that Sabo told us some years ago about his investors in Eastern, I think. So they had preferential liquidation rights that was actually quite high, and they had to accept it at the point that they were raising the investment. But some rounds later, he was smart enough to actually go and renegotiate everything from the back, and he told me, us, some people, actually without renegotiating that clause, he would get up to zero money from some Eastern. That was actually an important thing, because when things come to the end of the life cycle, without that clause, it would be like full up. And it was a good thing that he actually negotiated it. So sometimes you have to give in, but you can always come back, like when you're in bed phase of life. That was an interesting story because it was like from someone.
I would like to, of course, yes, take your lawyers, get a really great team around you, but that's be really involved in it, and go through the fine print yourself. Because sometimes you might just stumble upon something that you want to go through again. I think that's really important and quite important for founders at any stage of the company.
One example I can give is we had a pretty standard industry standard deal where we have a 36-month vesting period. We have a 36-month vesting period with a 3-month cliff and then daily unlocks, which for some of our investors, especially the ones who are more crypto-heavy investors, they were like 36 months. We're like, yeah, like we're building a company, it's gonna take years. And in the end, most of them agreed. There were a couple who didn't, but then we were, as you say, we were happy to scratch them off our list. But everybody who at that moment went through our term sheet and realized what we're doing, what we're building, were very much happy to sign. But it was, for a lot of the people who are in this crypto finance world, a cycle of 36 months is like.
Well, I see that the mics are gearing up as well, so I think it's time to wrap it up. Big round of applause for our panel. And of course, it's mingling time, so they're here as well. Dean is here as well. So if you have any questions, you are free to catch them, grab them before they leave. And now we can go out for some pizzas and some beer. Hopefully pizzas have arrived. Okay. Thank you.